For all those of us who are parents or imagine one day we might be, some things are axiomatic. If your child is hungry, you feed him or her. If he or she is sick, you seek immediate medical help. So imagine being a parent in Gaza, forced to watch your children hovering between life and death, often in intense pain. Children like Hannie, who lost his leg to the war and now desperately needs the kind of medical care Gaza can no longer provide. Or even Yakub. His injury was not caused by the war, but he runs the risk of dying because he cannot be treated where he is. And most shaming of all, perhaps, the sense we really seem to be doing very little to help.
UK stands alone, I would say, in not offering a formal pathway or a scheme for these children to come across.
We are so used now to the suffering in Gaza, and yet it just seems to get worse and worse, a daily spiral into hell. Also on News at 10 tonight. One of the strongest earthquakes in history, as tsunami alerts are issued from Japan to the North and South American Pacific coast. Democrats tried to use a 100-year-old law to force Trump to release the Epstein files. Seeing things as they really are, the Oscar-winning director on his new film on the realities of the Ukrainian front line. And what will the new banknotes, the first redesign in 50 years, look like?
This is ITV News at 10 with Tom Bradby.
Good evening. It goes without saying, or at least it should, that if children are starving, you feed them, and if they're hurt, you care for them and treat them. But while the row continues to simmer over Keir Starmer's vow to recognise a Palestinian state unless Israel commits to peace and allows in aid, the starvation and the suffering simply continue unabated. Consider this one dreadful statistic: the number of children with acute malnutrition seen at the Gaza clinics of one charity has surged tenfold in the last 4 months, and many sick and wounded children will die unless they get better treatment than Gaza can give them. To survive, many need to leave for help, and tonight there are calls for Britain to set up an evacuation corridor, as they did for Ukrainian children. Time and again on this programme, we have showed you distressing images of the suffering of Gaza's children, but the truth is that suffering just goes on and on and on. So I'm afraid we must do so again tonight.
There is no mistaking love like this. A moment of pure joy, alongside unimaginable pain. In June, the war cost Hannie his leg, before he'd even had a chance to crawl. And while his mother won't let go of hope, this is the horror of being an injured or sick child in Gaza, lacking pain relief and food. The dreams parents once had for their children are shattered here every day.
He is still in terrible pain because the hospitals here lack the basic necessities. There is no proper medication for him, no painkillers, and no means to treat him adequately.
Like half of Gaza's mothers, she is malnourished, so can't breastfeed her son, whose tiny body needs multiple surgeries. But with so much of the health system destroyed by Israeli forces, infection is a constant risk. Hannie's life, just one of those hanging in the balance until a medical evacuation can be found. If resilience was qualification enough, little Yakub would be top of the list. His condition wasn't caused by the war, but he's still trapped by it. The 2-year-old has malformed arteries in his cheek that keep bleeding. Without treatment, he lives in constant danger of a bleed proving fatal. His doctors concerned it's a tumour that might become inoperable.
With every passing day, Yakub loses more blood and jawbone. I'm a mother watching my son die silently every day.
Now legal action is being taken on his behalf. supported by the UK charity Children Not Numbers. It argues the UK government's reliance on supporting treatment in Gaza and the region, rather than medically evacuating youngsters, is at odds with the way it helped Ukrainian children and the help being given by other countries.
We have had Spain, France, Belgium, Italy, Romania, and a lot of children has gone into USA as well with different aid organizations. But UK stands alone, I would say, in not offering a formal pathway or a scheme for these children to come across.
With some of the youngsters affected increasingly at risk of dying from hunger rather than their injuries, last week the Prime Minister shifted, saying the UK would take 30. But Children Not Numbers say double that number of youngsters on their list have already died waiting. It leaves families in Gaza seizing every precious moment, with Yakub and little Hannie, who need prompt action, not just promises. Rachel Younger, News at 10.
And Jasmine is here to talk about all the politics of this. Why are we doing so little, and are there any plans to change it?
So the Foreign Office this evening says it's looking at the next steps to set up any child evacuation scheme. But as the report notes, there's lots of questions about why this has taken so long and why the UK has taken so few children compared to other countries, for example, Turkey, which has taken in around 430. Even earlier this month, a cross-party group of MPs wrote to the Foreign Secretary and the Home Secretary reiterating the need for the UK to take in more vulnerable children, but also asking for clarity on very practical things like how any scheme would work alongside our visa rules, for example. Now, all of this comes off the back of growing pressure when it comes to the PM's kind of stance on the conflict more generally. As you noted yesterday, Sir Keir Starmer confirmed that the UK will recognise a Palestinian state in September unless the Israeli government meets certain conditions. But today, some families of Britons held captive by Hamas have accused him of using hostages as leverage. Some peers this evening are said to have written a letter questioning whether recognition could break international law. So Keir Starmer's in quite a tricky political position of having to navigate domestic opinion alongside diplomacy abroad. We've seen him meeting with US President Trump. He's going to have other meetings in the coming days and weeks with other world leaders as he tries to build an international kind of momentum towards a lasting ceasefire. OK,
Jasmine, thank you very much indeed. Now, one of the strongest recorded earthquakes in history caused widespread alarm and panic right across the Pacific Ocean today. After the 8.8 magnitude undersea tremor struck early today off Russia's remote far eastern coast, tsunami alerts were issued for countries from Japan and Hawaii to the Pacific coasts of North and South America. But as millions of people fled to higher ground, the expected surge of tsunami waves seems, so far at least, to have avoided densely populated coastal areas.
On the far eastern edge of Russia, you could hear the land slide as it was shaken this morning. At a hospital in Kamchatka, cancer surgery was interrupted and the patient held steady as the operating theatre rattled around the doctors. These were the first effects of one of the most powerful earthquakes ever recorded. It struck out at sea and threw water up onto the coast of the Kuril Islands, where it rearranged the layout of a fish processing factory as tsunami warnings howled, urging people to get in their cars and head for the high ground. Stay there, said the regional governor, until the tsunami warning is withdrawn. Hundreds of miles across the ocean in Japan, they have learned to live with the possibility of a giant wave which destroys everything in its path. Town centres in the north of the country quickly emptied and more than 2 million people were ordered to evacuate their homes. Some gathered on rooftops for fear of what might be on the way. I grabbed only what I could carry and came here as soon as I could, says this woman. Such was the strength of the quake, the tsunami warning stretched across the Pacific. In Hawaii, guests on the lower floors of this hotel camped out in the corridors upstairs. While on the beaches, the sirens blared and some worrying sights were seen.
When that water receded in Haleiwa and we saw some boats kind of laying on the dry rock and sand, that gave us pause. That doesn't happen for no reason. When the water pulls back like that, that means there's activity in the ocean. So again, we keep our fingers crossed that we don't suffer a big tsunami.
As the day went on, governments around the Pacific Rim began to downgrade their tsunami warnings, which were in place as far away as Peru. Those warnings were heeded, though. The ocean's coastlines have been spared disaster this time, it seems, but the people who live along them know the threat an upset sea can pose. Geraint Vincent, News at 10.
And Debbie is in Japan for us. Debbie, horrific memories no doubt stirred there of the Fukushima tsunami and nuclear accident back in 2011, but they seemed pretty well prepared this time.
Yes, Tom, but there was actually some confusion here when the sirens sounded and people started to receive alerts on their phone with tsunamis warnings across the whole eastern coast of Japan. People here hadn't felt the tremors from that massive earthquake further north in Russia, so it took them by surprise. But as you say, they were prepared, and there have been evacuation protocols in place since that devastating earthquake in 2011. People here took it very seriously and got to their designated safety areas. For people here in Chiba, it was the first real evacuation order that they had received since the earthquake and tsunami 14 years ago. They were very fearful of what was to come, and you can imagine how relieved they were last night when they were told that they could go home and that no significant damage had been reported across the country. But with the potential for aftershocks in the coming days, there are still advisories in place for coastal areas like this. Tom, it is extremely rare for warnings to be issued across such a vast area of the Pacific. So though alert levels are now being lowered, people here in Japan and across the region are still understandably on edge.
OK, Debbie, thank you very much indeed. Now back here, airlines across the UK are tonight fighting to bring their schedules back to normal after an air traffic control fault caused major disruption. The journeys of thousands of passengers were hit after what officials call a technical glitch affected air traffic control systems. Planes were immediately grounded and other restrictions placed on flights using the airspace over the London area. After engineers repaired the system, work began to tackle the major knock-on effects of the disruption, a massive backlog of delays. Now, that business about the so-called Epstein files reared up in front of Donald Trump again tonight. Senior Democrats are said to be digging up a 100-year-old law to try to force the release of files concerning the convicted paedophile Jeffrey Epstein, who died in prison in 2019. President Trump has been under growing pressure over his alleged links to Epstein.
Donald Trump's relationship with the paedophile financier Jeffrey Epstein is well documented. The president has always denied, though, he knew about Epstein's sexual abuse of girls.
Would you declassify the Epstein files?
Yeah. But despite campaigning on a promise to release all the government files on Epstein,
you don't want to affect people's lives if it's phony stuff in there, because there's a lot of phony stuff with that whole world.
Since returning to the White House, he's done his best to deflect and distract from the issue.
Are you still talking about Jeffrey Epstein?
Well, I haven't been overly interested in it. You know, it's a hoax that's been built up.
Today, the Democrats threatened to use an obscure law from 1928 to force the Department of Justice to make all the Epstein files public.
The evasions, the delays, the excuses, they are not just odd, they're alarming. It begs the question, if there's nothing to hide, why all the evasiveness?
And last night, questions about Trump's relationship with Epstein continued to swirl. The president confirming the two fell out because Epstein was poaching young women from the spa at Trump's Florida estate.
Yeah, he took people, and because he took people, I said, don't do it anymore. You know, they work for me. And he took, beyond that, he took some others. And once he did that, that was the end of him.
One of those spa workers was Virginia Giuffre, who claimed she'd been abused by both Epstein and Prince Andrew, something he's always denied. Her suicide, together with Epstein's, have perpetuated conspiracy theories of a sprawling deep state cover-up to protect powerful men involved in the abuse. The so-called Epstein files have become shorthand for a cover-up at the highest levels of government, an idea being weaponised by the Democrats, who sense Donald Trump's reluctance to release them might be a weakness they can exploit. Dan Rivers, News at 10, Washington.
Well, back here again, a student was today found guilty of assaulting 2 female police officers during a violent fracas at Manchester Airport. In scenes from the confrontation, which went viral on social media, one of the officers had her nose broken. Mohammed Fahir Amaz, who's 20, was resisting arrest after the 2 officers and a colleague were called to an incident in the airport's Terminal 2. He was eventually felled by a taser. Now, from the filmmaker who won an Oscar for his vivid and visceral account of the war in Ukraine, 20 Days in Mariupol, comes a new and, if anything, even more heartbreaking documentary. This follows a brigade of soldiers as they battle through heavily fortified forest to try to retake one small Russian-occupied village. The film was premiered in Kyiv in front of the grieving families of many of the soldiers. Mitslav Chernov spoke to John, who has himself often reported for us from the war's front line. He told him the important thing is to see things how they really are.
It's a walk in the woods you will never forget. From a war film like few others. No heroes, just men filled with fear, doing their duty. It's the summer of 2023, Ukraine's counter-offensive.
Biggest military operation in Europe since World War II.
And the story of one battle fought through a slither of forest, a mile-long section of hell.
Every single meter of Ukrainian land is someone's life and someone's blood. I hate war with every fiber of my body, but that's the challenge. Not glorifying war, still expressed that the war is the most terrible thing that humanity does to itself, but at the same time give an honor to these men.
That same summer, we were reporting from another part of the battle, close by at Bakhmut.
The Russians have been close and getting closer for a long time.
We saw the same courage, the same dedication.
I don't know about you, sometimes when I've done this kind of story, I feel a kind of guilt at the end of it. I file my report, I get to go home. These soldiers have to stay, and often they get killed. Do you feel that kind of, is it a survivor's guilt?
We call it guilt, but it's also an energy that pushes you forward, an energy that pushes you to, that you need to feel, that you feel you need to do more.
That guilt drove him back to the front line after his Oscar-winning documentary about the death of the Ukrainian city of Mariupol.
I wish to be able to exchange this to Russia never attacking Ukraine, never occupying our cities.
No ending for Ukraine's story has yet been written, and the most decisive figures are not those fighting and dying on the battlefield.
Who's the most important person to watch this? Would you like Donald Trump to sit down and watch your movie?
Of course, I would love to screen this film for a political establishment in US. There is so much fakes created by Russia. I'd love them to see things how they really are.
At great cost, the soldiers retake the village that is their object. But their victory is fleeting and the Russians soon return. This is a film that shows that war can be both futile and, for those defending their land, utterly essential. John Ray, News at 10.
The group Palestine Action today won the right to bring a legal challenge over the decision to ban it as a terror organisation. The Home Secretary, Yvette Cooper, imposed the ban under anti-terror laws after the group said it had damaged 2 Voyager planes at RAF Brize Norton on the 20th of June. But though Palestine Action won the right to a High Court challenge, the ban will not be paused before the case is heard in November. Dry statistics they might be, but today's latest figures about Britain's TV viewing habits appear to confirm that a momentous shift is now firmly underway. According to Ofcom, YouTube is now the second most watched service on family televisions in the UK. Last year, the BBC retained its traditional leading role, most watched by 19% of the audience. But YouTube has now risen to second with 14%, overtaking ITV, which is third on 12%. With Channel 4 at 6%, Netflix, Sky and all the other channels put together make up the rest. Changes which could have major implications for our media landscape and the business models which underpin it.
And welcome to the Side.
The TV set takeover is happening and YouTube is leading the charge.
Where we're going to play guitar for 10 minutes a day.
It is now the second most watched media service in the UK.
12 eager contestants.
Behind the BBC, but ahead of ITV.
You've seen this coming, right? This isn't new.
Jordan Schwarzenberger manages YouTube group Sidemen with 130 million subscribers.
What I think YouTube represents more than anything is the breakdown of centralized media and institutions. So you don't have gatekeepers anymore. These big institutions are competing against kids in their bedrooms, and that's the state of play. So how can the bigger institutions reconcile that change? They're cruise ships when you've got speedboats coming up.
Their content appeals to a younger audience, but it is them who are driving the trend. 16 to 34-year-olds watch 18 minutes of YouTube on television every day, and 20% of 4 to 15-year-olds head straight to the service as soon as they switch on. But even the over 55s have increased the time they spend watching YouTube on telly too, by almost double, from 6 minutes a day in 2023 to 11 minutes last year.
I go to YouTube if I want to search certain things, but not for news.
You can search instantly what you want and get it there and then.
I go to the internet and I find all sorts of interesting little snippets on YouTube.
Tell me why you won't give me some good steak.
And it's not just short snippets we're watching on it, but podcasts, game shows and longer form interviews.
It's always worth the wait, I think.
It means challenging times for traditional TV.
We put out a report last week that called on the public service broadcasters to work harder to make sure that their content is available on platforms where people are spending their time, like YouTube, but also social media platforms. At the same time, it's important that those platforms make that content easy to find and easy to enjoy for audiences.
But we are still coming together for key moments in the old-fashioned way. 11 million people watch the Lionesses win on terrestrial television.
Boys, bring them in!
Nevertheless, though, the juggernaut that is YouTube just keeps on rolling. Lucy Watson, News at 10.
Now, the Health Secretary has said resident doctors have squandered their goodwill by striking again over pay. The doctors ended a 5-day walkout this morning. Wes Streeting insists he won't reopen pay talks, but is open to discussing working conditions. The union, the British Medical Association, has not ruled out further action. An emotional farewell was given by Birmingham today to one of its favourite sons, the singer Ozzy Osbourne. Thousands of fans turned out to pay tribute to the much-loved performer, who throughout the ups and downs of his fame remained a Brummie at heart. The day's mixture of sadness and celebration was shared by the heavy metal star's wife, Sharon Osbourne, and their 3 children.
He was the ultimate frontman, and today Ozzy Osbourne took centre stage for the final time. It was in this city that he gave birth to heavy metal, and a place where fans would do anything to get one last moment with the Prince of Darkness.
It was emotional. You know, when his cortege went past, oh my God, it was very, very tearful.
I was pouring a sweat, but I don't know if it was sweat or my actual eyes, you know what I'm saying?
The procession paused at the iconic Black Sabbath bridge, where the family's grief was also on show. Sharon Osbourne, supported by their children Kelly and Jack, and what felt like the whole of Birmingham. This was a very public outpouring of affection for a family who've lived their lives in front of the cameras. It's hard to believe that 3 weeks ago he was on stage just around the corner from here. The Harrison family were at that final farewell gig.
We had Sabbath at our wedding, played at our wedding. I mean, you know, it's the children have been brought up on it. Our grandson now is singing songs by him.
And fans say his influence on them and this city is permanent.
Just love Ozzy and Birmingham and music. Just a little tribute to him.
In 1982, I camped outside the Odeon New Street to see him and we got front row seats. So I've had this all my life.
It's just great to see this in Birmingham, you know. Makes me proud to be a Brummer.
Ozzy will now be laid to rest at a private family funeral. But the Osbournes organised and paid for this procession to allow fans to give Ozzy a rock star send-off. Stacey Foster, News at 10, Birmingham.
Finally, the Bank of England has begun the lengthy process of choosing new designs for our banknotes. It'll be the first major redesign for 50 years. And even though they're growing up in an increasingly cash-free society, it's actually young people that have sent in many of the ideas.
Printed in their millions, banknotes have traditionally featured historical figures. Royalty has appeared on Bank of England notes since 1960. Other characters, starting with William Shakespeare, were first seen on the reverse a decade later. The bank has now asked the public for ideas on new themes including nature, art and science. People have answered in their thousands.
Probably animals that are native to England, maybe. I think that would be quite interesting and quite colourful.
Fluffy animals.
Fluffy animals, like which ones?
Red pandas.
The king will still be on the front, but the back will have new images. Some ideas sent in from children include the Angel of the North sculpture in Gateshead, the Sycamore Gap tree, which was felled in 2023, and this lively drawing of a dolphin.
I think what this is really showing is how much there is to celebrate in the UK. We've had lots of animals, we've had lots of landmarks, we've had the Blackpool Tower and Tower Bridge and things from right across the four nations, and that's what's great with all of these themes. These ones are really beautiful, and this is from a centre for people with dementia and their carers. And again, I think they've used this as an opportunity to sort of bring out the creative side, but also they're making the point that actually some of the people at that centre use cash a lot. It's really important for them.
But will a design overhaul help reverse the decline of cash?
I don't think it makes much difference to me. I use cash anyway, so yeah, I don't mind what's on there. It'd be nice to have something different on her face, but...
Andrew Bailey and Sarah John, Your Majesty.
The final decision on the winner rests with Governor Andrew Bailey. Its consultation closes tomorrow, so you could help cash remain king. Laura Jones, News at 10.
More fluffy animals. Has to be the answer. Good night. Thank you for watching.